It's the whole issue of climate change. It's mandatory caps on greenhouse gas emissions.
It's global warming in here.
If we vote yes on this package, the 50 miles of light rail that we build out of this package are going to totally transform the way we think about land use, the way we think about density, the way we think about sprawl. For those of you that have been anywhere with a significant light rail system, you can see the investments around those stations come in when the stations open. Places like Washington, D.C., places like Portland, places like San Diego, places like Vancouver have all seen similar results. You build light rail, you get density around the stations. We've got to figure out, if we don't build light rail, where those people are going to go, and guess where they're going to go? They're going to go to sprawly, away from the city places without the density and transportation choices to support their mobility. We're going to see increased greenhouse gas emissions, and we're going to see a lot more traffic congestion. In addition to the 50 miles of light rail that we're going to see out of this package, which is light rail from Seattle to Tacoma, light rail from Seattle through downtown Bellevue across I-90 to Redmond, and light rail north from the University of Washington to Mill Creek, which is just a couple of miles short of Everett. We're also going to see a significant increase in HOV lanes, so better opportunities for buses coming from the east side especially. New HOV lanes on 520, new HOV lanes on I-90, new HOV lanes on 167, which is the south part of the county. It's disingenuous, I think, for us to talk about the impact of greenhouse gas emissions from this package because, frankly, we don't know. We know certainly that when you build more roads, we're going to have an increase in greenhouse gas emissions resulting from that. But what we don't know is what kind of decrease we're going to see from the land use changes around light rail. What we don't know is how many people are going to be moving to this region and riding that light rail once it's up and running. What we don't know is the decreases in vehicles once we open those new HOV lanes. So for us to sit here and say that this package is bad for global warming or good for global warming, I think is a totally red herring and we shouldn't be talking about.
Well, I'm going to be completely disingenuous because I am going to talk about global warming here. Scientists tell us that we need to reduce our carbon emissions 80% by 2050 to avoid catastrophic climate change. So if we're going to reduce it 80% by 2050, I mean that's a lot. In our region, 50% of our emissions come from transportation. So we have to address transportation if we're going to get there. Here we are talking about making I don't know if this is a 20-year investment or a 50-year investment in transportation, but it's a big investment. And if we make this investment, we're done doing big transportation projects for a while. And there's not a lot of other pools of $18 billion sitting around if we pass this. And we're locking it into a plan that will make global warming worse. What we do know about roads is they fill up. I don't know if you guys saw the sightline analysis they did, but each mile of road, of new highway expansion in an urban area adds in excess of 100,000 tons of carbon. There's 182 miles of roads in this. 152 of them are general purpose. Rob talked about significant investments in HOV. 16% of the new highway lanes are HOV, 84 are not. When we turned down referendum 51 in 2003, the legislature came back with a package that had something like in the mid-20s for HOV. The 9.5% gas tax, I think, was about 30-some% HOV. Now we're going backwards to 16% HOV. I mean, we're going in the wrong direction on this stuff. Even all that aside, though, this plan, 182 miles of roads, they're going to fill up with cars. Look at cities with great transit. Their roads are still packed. I see this as like two separate universes going on. Sure, some people get out of their cars to drive transit, but other people that aren't driving then fill them up. The roads just, we don't live in a world where the roads are free-flowing. And so if we add 182 miles of highway lanes to our system, we're going to have that much more greenhouse gas emissions. We need light rail. We need a lot of it. We need all sorts of transit alternatives, and we need it really soon, like yesterday. But passing this and locking us into 20-year investment in a project that's going to make global warming worse is not what we need.
You guys say that it's not going to come back in 2008 for sure, and it's going to come back smaller. You guys say it can come back. And you say that's wrong, you say they're wrong. So can you guys just kind of address all of that?
Should we have the political geniuses do that?
So anybody just jump in.
Eric Barnett's bus plan. No, look, let me jump into this. Yeah, look,
politically, it took 5 years. I know, that's sort of cute, but I couldn't find the
They're all gonna look just like
that. It took 5 years to get to this point, to get this thing on the ballot. I don't know how long it'll take to get the next thing on the ballot, but what we know is it'll be less light rail, and may have some less roads, may have more roads, but it's certainly going to be less light rail. It may be, my guess is 3 years before we see this thing. Look, it's not going to run in 08 because of the political dynamics of Olympia. Everyone knows that. Everyone sort of said it. If these guys say differently, I'd like them to tell us who they're talking to in Olympia that are going to put this on the ballot next year, because...
Sounds like from your assumption, though, that you're saying it's going to come back, it's a package, and less light rail, not sure how many roads, but you're assuming that it's going to be a combined package. Couldn't a perception be that, hey, this was rejected, they shouldn't have been combined in the first place, and so the starting point can be, and now it doesn't have to be 18 billion, it can be 12 billion, and it can be transit.
Politicians don't get to say when something goes down, nothing's coming back. They brought Sound Transit back when it went down. After RTID failed, they came back with road measures. Of course they're going to come back with something. And of course they're telling you there's nothing, there's no plan B, because they want you to vote yes. But politics never works that way. You always come back with something new, and you have to respond to public demand.
Well, first of all, you guys didn't answer my question about who you're talking to in Olympia. But secondly, let's talk about the global warming question, because we're talking about an 80% reduction in
By 2050.
By 2050, which a laudable goal. I'm all for 80% reduction. But what you just said, even if we build 50 miles of light rail, 50 miles, make a $12 billion investment in light rail, we are going to get essentially a minimal reduction in global warming emissions by 2050. And when you factor on top of that, we are adding 1 million people to this region. Let's say we don't build another inch of road again. Status quo on the roadside.
And in response to Sandeep's question, I would like a list from Sandeep of public statements from every public official who says that they do not, from this region, from Seattle and Pierce and King counties, who say we are going to kill light rail if we don't get this package and we aren't going to bring it back next year. Let's get that statement, because they are allowed to come back. I'd like to hear the Sound Transit board members and the elected officials stand up and say, no, sorry, you pissed us off.
I don't think the issue is whether or not it'll come back. I think the question is whether or not it'll come back with roads again. And what David Hiller said is that Dave Updegrove, who is from South King County and professes to be the biggest environmental champion we have in Olympia, says that you're never going to get transit without roads. Judy Cliburn, who's the chair of the House Transportation Committee, says you're never going to get transit without roads. The governor says we got to repair the 520 bridge, we got to repair the Alaska Way Viaduct. WashDOT's responsibility is to build more roads, so we're going to build more roads.
That's not WashDOT's responsibility.
But do you think that
you helped change that responsibility last year?
With
their responsibilities to move people and goods.
What the Sierra Club has done for the first time in this state's political history is we've made the transportation discussion about global warming. That's what this campaign has done. And if we win this campaign and the transportation discussion in the legislature in the future is about global warming, that is great for transit. That is great for transit-oriented development.
Down is going to be great for transit.
If this thing, well, if that's going to change the political dynamic. You will not be able to come to the public and say, build projects that make global warming worse, that drive sprawl, that drive more driving. If you're going to make it better for global warming, you're going to have to come back with ways to do it.
The voters rejected light rail and new roads.
Not
light rail is the higher profile aspect of it that people.
Global warming is what we're running on. Global warming is what we're running on.
But it's not what Carol Freeman and others are running.
How much money have you guys, Sierra Club, put into your campaign?
How much money have you put in?
Well, I have a point to make. I mean, it's not a significant, or it's a, what, $25,000?
You know what? In the middle of a campaign, we're not going to tell you about what our budget is or whatever.
But my point is,
hey, that was political genius.
Okay,
my point is this, which is that
this seems off topic for everybody, but you guys a little bit. But go ahead, and then I have a follow up on something.
Kemper Freeman put in another $100,000. In other words, we're only seeing one side of the no campaign here, right?
I think we're all aware that there's a huge, and if we're not, there's a huge pro-roads argument for RTID, or against some.
And that's where what I'm saying is that's where the money is, that's where the TV ads are, that's where.
So how's that relevant to this argument?
That's what I'm saying. I don't think
the lesson learned if this goes down is that well, I mean, it should be that you can't put these two projects together.